hundreds of new corona cases in German slaughterhouses. That's what mass tests in the meat industry have revealed. Some meat processing companies have been forced to shut down temporarily. The outbreak has shed light on the dire working and living conditions of employees. Critics say it is these conditions that made it easy for the virus to spread so rapidly.
Es liegt an Nähe und an mangelnder Hygiene. Nähe am Arbeitsplatz, schön feuchte Bedingungen, Dämpfe und die Unterbringung ist schlicht gesagt eine Schweinerei.
The German meat company Westfleisch is among those that were shut down because of a coronavirus outbreak among employees. More than 200 have tested positive. Workers' unions say crowded accommodations are to blame for the outbreak. Westfleisch has disputed the claims, saying that most of its employees stay in individual apartments of not more than 5 people. Many workers are foreign and come from countries including Poland, Romania, and Bulgaria. In many cases, they are not directly employed by the meat company, but by subcontractors. And these subcontractors often cram them into tiny shared accommodations. They also transport them in small, crowded buses. All this makes it difficult for the workers to follow the required hygiene measures, like keeping a distance and avoiding contact. Quarantining those who have tested positive is nearly impossible. The migrant workers often have no means to fight this kind of oppression.
Ich habe das Gefühl, es ist so eine Art Missbrauch der Freizügigkeit in der EU. Durch die EU kriegst du und die Arbeitnehmerfreizügigkeit, Leute aus anderen Städten, Bereichen, die vielleicht nicht so eine gute wirtschaftliche Entwicklung haben, die kommen hierher, weil sie froh sind, einen Job zu haben. Aber dabei werden sie bei der Gelegenheit gleich nach Strich und Faden ausgenutzt. Und zwar doppelt, beim Lohn und bei ihrer Gesundheit.
For years, rights groups, workers' unions, and members of the German opposition have demanded that working conditions in the German meat industry change. The recent coronavirus outbreak has put the issue back on the agenda. Such outbreaks are not unique to Germany, with meat processing and packaging facilities particularly hard hit in the United States. Some 22 facilities were shut down due to rising COVID-19 cases among their workers, many of whom have recently immigrated to the US or are undocumented migrants. In the US state of Maryland, a majority of the workforce in the poultry industry is from the Haitian community. Many have been affected by the coronavirus.
It's a little bit complicated because some of them are undocumented, and that will make it harder for them to kind of say, well, I'm going to stay home without the approval of the company. And then they will just, if they feel a fever, one of the symptoms, they have to actually go to work.
In April, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention released a report that found that nearly 5,000 meat packaging plant workers from 19 states had contracted the coronavirus, and that social distancing measures were particularly hard to implement at the plants. In spite of all that, President Trump recently signed an executive order declaring meat processing plants critical infrastructure. That means they have to remain open to ensure a constant meat supply.
I think our biggest fear right now is that we can't get the PPE that we need and we can't get the testing, and not because it's not available, it's because there's too much bureaucracy in the way. Again, make these workers frontline employees in this pandemic, give them the access to the PPE, to the testing, to all the things that they need to do their job safely. That's my biggest concern.
This is just one example of how, around the world, low-income workers and minorities are at a higher risk of contracting the virus. In the US, initial analysis of the coronavirus cases has revealed a disturbing trend. Members of the Latino and African-American community are more likely to contract the coronavirus than white Americans. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo believes that a number of factors may have contributed to this difference in his state.
There were existing health disparities. There were existing comorbidities, underlying illnesses, diabetes, etc. I also believe you have a greater percentage of the quote-unquote essential workers who are African-American and Latino. And while everyone else or many other people had the opportunity to lock down at home, as terrible as that was, the essential workers had to get up every morning and go out and drive the bus and drive the train and deliver the food.
Latinos and African Americans have also reportedly been hardest hit by the financial impact of the corona crisis. Jobless rates in the U.S. are highest among these two groups. Latinos and non-college graduates are heavily concentrated in low-wage occupations. Some worked in the leisure and hospitality sectors, in hotels, restaurants, and bars, where job cuts have been especially brutal. Low-income workers across the world are facing similar hardships. 2 million Indonesians have been laid off because of the pandemic. Budi Santosan is one of them. He can no longer work at a restaurant or as a taxi driver. The only thing left for him is to do occasional food delivery jobs, but these earn him much less.
Kalau kayak kita di rumah aja ya, anak istri kita nggak makan gitu kan, Mbak. Ya emang sih kita juga ngambil resiko gitu kan. Namanya kita hidup di jalan gitu kan ya. Resikonya itu takutnya tular corona atau gimana gitu kan. Ya jadi ya harapan kami itu ya mungkin bantuan lah dari pemerintah gitu kan.
According to the International Labour Organization, 55% of the world's population are not covered by social insurance or social assistance. That's about 4 billion people. Right now, thousands of migrant workers are on the move. Job losses have forced them to take on long journeys back home, often in large groups. The International Organization for Migration is sounding alarm.
Our concern in Latin America is above all the thousands of Venezuelans that have lost their jobs in countries like Ecuador and Colombia and are returning back to Venezuela in large crowds without any else screening and being quarantined when they go back to Venezuela.
It's a similar picture in India. Millions of low-income workers had moved to big cities like Mumbai and New Delhi to find work. Because of an imposed lockdown, they are now making the long and often crowded journeys back to their home villages. And unemployment is not the only thing making them flee from the cities. Mumbai and Delhi have become dangerous coronavirus hotspots.
सर यहाँ पे बीमारी इतना फैला तो क्या करेंगे, जाना तो पड़ेगा ना यहाँ से, थोड़े दिन के लिए गाँव तो फिर जाना ही पड़ेगा. बीमारियाँ इतना बड़ा कंट्रोल तो हो नहीं रहा कुछ भी, इसके लिए हम जाना चाहते हैं.
Transportation to the villages is still limited. Migrant workers often have to travel in crowded buses or even on foot. A lack of protective gear and sanitary facilities along the way make it easier for them to catch the coronavirus. Some die because of a lack of food. In fact, the corona crisis may lead to a countrywide food shortage in India. This will very likely mainly affect poorer communities.
देश कोरोना से पता नहीं कब मरेगा, देश भूखा पहले मर जाएगा, इस चीज़ के ऊपर ध्यान नहीं दिया सरकार ने. आज पूरे देश में ज़्यादातर लगभग मेरा मानना है जो 70% आबादी है उसको फल की, सब्जियों की और ये अपने जितनी भी सब्जियां, टमाटर की, शिमला मिर्च का देश में अभाव है, उनको मिल नहीं पा रहा.
The International Labour Organization is proposing a number of measures to help those in vulnerable working conditions. They include extending sickness benefits to all workers, even those in the informal sector, and migrants.
The COVID-19 crisis has shown us that we are only as secure as the most vulnerable amongst us. And this is why it's so important that people have access to high quality healthcare and enough income security in order to be able to eat and survive. And this is why universal social protection is so important for recovery from the crisis and for social justice.
Back in Germany, the corona outbreak in meat packing facilities has led to an introduction of new restrictions for the industry. From January 2021, meat industry workers can only be employed directly by a company, not by subcontractors. Furthermore, employers that provide accommodation will be responsible for informing authorities about where their migrant workers are living. Fines for violating working hour restrictions have also been doubled.